113 miles an hour, and then the acceleration blast. Watch the speed. 170 miles an hour before he gets on the brakes. But here's the blast on the drag straight. The drag strip down this long back straight.
The key here is acceleration on this downhill run at this point, and then all over the brakes and down through the gears at the end of it.
Look at this. 191 miles an hour around the outside, and Emerson still holds that defensive line down the inside. But I tell you, Emerson has his hands full. Look at Al Jr.
This time Bussell tries a slightly different line over to the right, about 2 car widths over. Al Unser Jr. closes in with that again as well. Bussell continues his pursuit of Emerson Fittipaldi, while Fittipaldi's teammate Paul Tracy, both players in the championship fight, begin to pull away.
Exactly what the leader needs, because he has a dogfight going on behind him. They will slow each other up in second, third, and fourth here as Tracy inches away.
So 9 laps complete for the leader, Paul Tracy, as he flashes across the line. We're underway at Mid-Ohio, and it looks like it's going to be an interesting outcome. At the Pioneer Electronics 200, the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Paul Tracy seems to be running about a second a lap faster than everyone else. Here is the interval leaderboard. 0-0 would be Paul Tracy, and then on the right side, the interval back from the leader of the race. Paul Tracy is right now running the fastest laps of this race and pulling away from everybody. Raul Boisel, the third place car, broken off from his battle with Fittipaldi of just a few moments ago, but threatened by Al Unser Jr., Scott Goodyear, Teo Fabi, and soon Mario Andretti lined up just behind him.
Sometimes you get an opportunity to pounce. If you can take it and make the pass stick, you're looking good. But Boisel has now allowed Emerson to just creep away. He may not get the same opportunity, or he certainly won't get it in these immediate laps. But sometimes you have to be more decisive when you try to make that pass.
This is a course where getting the power down on the course, getting the grip, the traction is so critical. As Al Unser Jr. closes in on Boisel, winds to the outside on the keyhole. This should be a good run. Here's Nigel Mansell working his way through traffic.
That's Robbie Gordon right ahead of him, number 14, A.J. Foytska. Now here's the blast down the front straight. Both Ford engine cars, but can Mansell get up inside Gordon under braking? Have a look here. No.
Al Unser Jr. stayed back behind Boisel as they came down through this part of the course. But Mansell driving for all he's worth now. This should be a brilliant run as he tries to find any position he can. He needs to get up at least a 12th position, hopefully higher, and pick up some PPG points.
He needs help with attrition, because the chances of him, no matter how good he is, of making all that ground up on the racetrack is virtually zero. So he needs a lot of help here with attrition and problems for other people.
Coming back up to the front of the field now, that battle between Al Unser Jr. and Raul Boisel. While broken off behind Boisel, look at Scott Goodyear. This, of course, is a time in the season. You heard Scott Goodyear at the beginning of our coverage here talk about what he may or may not do next year. This is a time when there's a lot of showing off, isn't there, Derek, where guys really want to perform well so they can convince owners and sponsors of where they should be next year.
I mean, that's all part of the silly season. In Scott Goodyear's instance, we know that the McKenzie backing will not be there for next year. That could create a problem for Derek Walker. He needs to secure the type of financing to keep a Scott Goodyear caliber driver in that team. Otherwise, Scott may be forced to actually make a move somewhere else.
Al Unser Jr. continues to work on third place, Raul Boisel. The Dick Simon team. Simon's talked about next year maybe only a 2-car team. Do we know who the 2 will be? We know one is Boisel.
Well, at one stage, we almost had a Dick Simon championship here. He ran 5 cars, he ran 6 cars. I mean, he could have his own racing championship. But I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to say. He does a very good job running multiple teams and cars. But I always believe if you have 2 good cars and good drivers, ultimately, if you concentrate on them, you may actually end up being more successful.
So the battle continues to revolve around Raul Boisel, and Jan Bikas can give us a little more on his position.
Speaking of Dick Simon, Paul, we checked in with the crew. He is not radioed in with any problems, but of course he has dropped back from contact with Emerson Fittipaldi. It appears now as though he may be holding up Allinger Jr. and those behind him. They feel it might just be a strategy to take a breather after trying to pass Emerson. Taking a breather, they look for him to close in a few laps.
Well, he's sitting back about a second and a half behind Fittipaldi. It does seem that Allinger Jr. works better in some sections of the course than Boisel. Boisel makes it up in other sections. Of course, you're talking on Raul's car, a machine that they're doing a lot of really good aerodynamic work with, aerodynamic work that is being copied by many of the other Lolas. We go back to the front of the field now. Paul Tracy runs in first place, and he is 10.7 seconds ahead of his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi. The fight is definitely on here, but it seems no longer for the championship. Football continues tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time as the Baltimore Orioles host the Oakland A's. The Orioles have put themselves back in contention in the AL East, a 1.5 game behind Toronto. At the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, we watch Nigel Mansell continue to work his way up through the field, but the numbers are quite simple. He's 2 laps behind everyone else in this race, and as a result of that, he has a long, long day ahead. Looking back at the bottom of that field, though, we should also remember that not only Mansell fell 2 laps behind, so did Stefan Johansson, and Mike Groff, with his contact on that first turn incident, the second incident, a separate one from that of Mansell, has fallen a lap behind the race. So Danny Sullivan is back in the pits. Sullivan, of course, has been struggling throughout the day, and he is now 8 laps behind the leader. We took a look at the running order at the conclusion of 14 laps and look down the pit straight as Mansell continues to try to work his way through the field, and Paul Tracy continues to run away.
And it is difficult to pass here, particularly when the cars are fairly even. Now Mansell draws up again under the rear wing of Gordon, but he's not close enough. You can see it there in the braking zone. He's not close enough. Who was that on the left-hand side running wide? Gugelmin, maybe.
Mansell still pursuing Gordon. He can pass the slower cars, but the further he comes up through the field, the closer he comes to his own speed. And remember, still not certain. You assume that they did a good job on that car in terms of getting the nose back with the right angles. They had the preset rods there, but maybe it's not exactly right.
So obviously it wasn't Gugelmin that we saw on the left-hand side run wide through the keyhole. It possibly was Buddy Lazier. That's the other brightly colored car, red and white. But Gugelmin and Robbie Gordon here are embroiled in a tremendous battle. And I mean, they don't need to move over and let Mansell by, because this is all racing for position.
Absolutely. It's a battle for 10th place. As Robbie Gordon closes in, makes his challenge, Mansell watches now, perhaps a little more carefully.
Look at Gugelmin now. Lost a little bit there. Oh, look at this. Very difficult to move down the inside there. There just isn't enough time to make the pass. But Mansell is ready to pounce here if Robbie Gordon slips up at all in his attempt to pass Gugelmin.
As long and big as this course is, 2.25 miles, look at Mansell fight that wheel as the back end comes loose.
Look how wide he goes. There's a concrete patch through the keyhole there. Mansell went right across the concrete patch down the outside. Now he's got to run on Gordon. Is he going to get close enough? Here he comes.
Gordon's not having any part of that.
No, I tell you, slice his nose off. I don't care if you're a world champion. Watch me. I mean, Gordon's entitled to do that. He is. We mentioned about the young gun being Tracy. You have to include a Robbie Gordon in that category also. I believe he has told AJ Foyt that he will not drive for him next year, and it's becoming more open now.
Brian Till suddenly slowing on the race course and definitely off the pace now. He was not in contention at the top of the order, but was running 15th.
Great shame. He was, believe it or not, running 5th fastest on Friday, and then had electrical problems in qualifying. Blew the engine in the second qualifying, but he was running very, very fast on Friday.
Danny Sullivan out of the car and with Jan Bikas.
Danny, things went from bad to worse. What happened there at the start?
Well, somebody tapped Johansson. He spun. We all got jammed in behind. I was trying to get around. Everybody stalled the car. Then I got a tow, and when they towed, I let go of the rope, and it wrapped in the front suspension. They stopped. and it just jerked the car, spun me off the track, and bent the front suspension, a toe link, and broke all that. Then we got that fixed after a couple stops, went out, and we had a oil pressure problem, and that's it. I mean, it was like a comedy of errors, you know, one thing after another.
Boy, sometimes when it goes, huh?
That's right.
Danny, let's go back to Paul.
You know, Danny Sullivan with a day slightly worse than Nigel Mansell. Only his second DNF this year, or the second DNF here at Mid-Ohio. Danny Sullivan has been in 10 different events here on the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course.
Look how long a lead Paul Tracy has over his own teammate, Emerson Fittipaldi. The full length of this straight here, which is longer than it even looked with our lens of our camera here. But what a fight we still have going back here. 3, 4, 5, and 6 with Teo Fabi pulling up the rear, having one of his best races of the year.
Well, let's do the arithmetic on this. You've got 19 laps complete in the race. The first laps were under yellow, and Paul Tracy's about 14 seconds ahead of the field. So, in fact, he is pulling away at about a second a lap over his teammate, Emerson Fittipaldi. Just blistered a lap off at 114.6 miles an hour. That by almost a full mile an hour faster than anybody else on the course. We're continuing to monitor this battle that goes on between Nigel Mansell and Robbie Gordon. This was just a few laps ago. Look at how hard they are both fighting.
This is a tremendous fight here. Now Mansell still tries to go around the outside. Right here, look. He gives up right there. Here he is again. He gets down the inside. And finally, after 5 laps, scrambles past Robbie Gordon. Tracy's off.
Paul Tracy is off the course. Remember the zest of youth and how it has cost him this year? It's done so again. Ari Leyendyk was closing up behind Gordon just as Mansell got around as they began to battle, and then suddenly through the sand trap and into the tire barrier, Paul Tracy.
And it was again in laps traffic that Scott Pruitt ahead of him. Look at this, he gets very close, locks it up over the curb. It's a right-hander here, and that's it. It's all lost. You may be burying his championship hopes in that sand trap and under those tires as we watch it right there.
And is that shades of Bobby Rahal last year, where he ran off the corner and almost ended his possibility of a championship? Roger Penske has been on the radio to Paul. Not anymore. Paul unplugged it and got out pretty quick.
Well, here it is again. That's a mistake. That's a driver error. You can't call that anything else. You have to be able to adapt to slower cars being in your way, particularly when you're passing them or lapping them. That's something he must do. He just threw away another race win.
Well, that creates a battle back at the front of the field, as Fittipaldi is now sitting about 7 seconds ahead of this battle, and this is now a battle for second place between Bosell and Alonso Jr.
And it has also opened up the championship, because Emerson now could possibly be in a position, well, he is right now, to get winner's points, and Mansell has yet to get in a position to score any points.
Well, given the current positioning, we could leave this race with Mansell still at the front of the order, but he would lose 20 precious points to Fittipaldi. That's assuming it stays the way it is, and we're not going to begin to make that assumption.
And we dropped Teo Fabi from this group right here. Fabi, who was having a great run, hung on to the back of these guys, and he has been dropped. He is no longer behind Scott Goodyear.
If you're tracking Eddie Cheever, he is finally back in the race after a 21-minute repair. They finally got him back out and into action. We watch the battle for second. It continues on. Now here we have Robbie Gordon battling with Ari Leyendyk as they start to chop at one another as they move through traffic and continue their battle now for 9th place. They all moved up when Paul Tracy came off.
Here's Mansell now. Mark Smith is the next attack point here. He comes down the inside. And we do hear
you can see some drops of rain on these camera lenses now.
Whoa,
you think this was interesting before? What's going to happen now?
That will open up some difficulties here. Oh, look at this. Gugelmin, Robbie Gordon, and Leyendyk all embroiled in a battle here for position. Gordon has not been able to pass Gugelmin.
Three-way fight for 8th, and they close on Mark Smith in 7th. Yellow flags out.